My Lords, the Noble Lord Parkinson is not able to be here to move this amendment. This amendment falls in a slightly odd group for me. I thought it would be in the first group, then I thought it was going to be in the group before, and now it's ended up in this group. So I'm going to briefly talk on this and then speak to what this group's actually about, which is a different set of concerns. Right. The point of this amendment was to ask the question whether lowering the voting age to 16 adds a layer of complexity to the discussion around what age and any age gating that is happening either in relation to the generational smoking ban, but also in relation to the sale of vapes and so on. And it intersects, obviously, with questions of autonomy, responsibility, and any kind of consistency we might have in relation to how we treat young people. Because a lot of concerns have been raised already today on the first group about young people and whether they're mature enough, the vulnerability of young people and so on. But if 16-year-olds are deemed mature enough to vote and influence laws that affect society, that strengthens the argument that denying them the right to make personal choices about any range of things, and that could be smoking, let alone vaping, when they have, in fact, the right to vote, implies, which obviously we hope implies a level of rational decision-making capacity, would seem to be contradictory. So it's really a probing amendment, I think, that the Noble Lord Parkinson was going to put forward, which I think it would be interesting to hear the government's response to. I do think that there's a danger of a confusion over age and what we consider to be who we're protecting from harm with this contradiction of a different government policy around voting. Now to talk about the amendments in this group that make sense to me a bit more. I'm very supportive and put my name down to the Amendment 18 by the Noble Lord Moylan, which is looking at the issue of a ban on all vending machines and whether there can be some exemptions. I really would urge the government to engage with a wide range of stakeholders to prevent what I think will be unintended consequences if the legislation carries on with this ban, because surely this law wants to ensure that safer alternatives to smoking are available, and especially in particular in environments where they might actually help people resist having a cigarette. And one of the such environments are hospitals, and particularly mental health settings. I'm reluctant to kind of push this too much because this is the Noble Lord Moylan's amendment, but I can't work out how else I can speak. But I want to ask the Noble Lady, the Minister, whether there is a danger that we are imposing measures on tobacco and vaping without clarity, as this follows on from what we've just been talking about the differing relative harms of each product. And I think that the ban on vaping machines kind of talks to a kind of conflation of products that I'm concerned about. Vending machines containing vaping products have been used very successfully in mental health settings, providing patients who would otherwise be smoking a route to giving up. An exemption, therefore, to the vending machine ban for healthcare settings, which, by the way, is supported by Mental Health and Smoking Partnership, which is a coalition of 27 health and mental health organisations, and includes some of the major rural colleges. It seems to me to just be, as they say, something of a no-brainer. Just to also note that if you, as somebody who started my professional life working in mental health and also went on to work in education in psychiatric hospitals for a period of time as well, people will know that people with particularly strong, severe mental health conditions who may be sectioned into hospitals, but not actually only that, but also just with terrible debilitating illnesses like schizophrenia and so on, the thing that you notice when you first start working with them, and I remember when I was young noticing this, was just how much they smoked. I mean, chain smoking is part almost of the condition. And any of us who worked with the mentally ill always were concerned that not only were people suffering these terrible psychotic illnesses, but that also were smoking so much. And the irony here was that you also knew that it was part of calming them down. That was the way that they were able to cope with both the heavy medication, the psychosis, and so on. Now, I'm not making a case here for smoking cigarettes, because actually, I therefore think, isn't it fantastic that we found a substitute for smoking cigarettes for a group of people in society who are already suffering terrible health problems in relation to mental health, and that is vapes. And so therefore we're talking about a group of people who are often, by the way, locked up in hospitals having access to those vapes. And that's what the vapes, the vending machines for vapes means, and it's why I think that so many people are very enthusiastic about this. I have to say, just because there's a couple of other amendments, very quickly, so that's why that amendment's really important. I'm afraid I can't support Earl Russell and Baroness Walmsley's Amendment 21, by the way, on minimum pricing of vaping products, which is also in this group. The Noble Lord Earl Russell assures me that his £30 vape is ultimately cheaper than constantly restocking. And he also says it's easier to use. Well, two thoughts on that. First of all, £30 as a minimum price is rather expensive at upfront cost for the people that we keep hearing everybody cares about, which is poor people, which generally I think the problem with poor people is they haven't got enough money, and that we should have a thriving economy where they earn money through jobs myself. But that's on one side. But anyway, I think that the Noble Lord Earl Russell has a really good point about the virtues of these £30 vapes, and I've looked into them since he told me about them. But I would note that if we want to popularise an alternative to the other kind of vapes, then we have to have a bill that doesn't ban advertising the merits of any kind of vaping, because actually how would anyone find out? I mean, I can casually find out on the vaping bench in the House of Lords, but not everybody has that facility. So I would remind us that we might need to look at that. And I don't think the way to deal with promoting the virtues of that particular type of vaping machine is enhanced by banning the competition. I think it would be much better to have a proactive campaign. And actually, cancer research also, would you believe, opposes this approach, because it says that the price of vaping products and liquids is already set to increase with the UK government's vaping products duty, and it believes that the increase could reduce rates of vaping and vaping, particularly and there's not significant evidence to suggest it would encourage cessation. It actually suggests that we need to incentivise vaping of all sorts, and that price and low price can be a very vital part of that. So in that sense, I'm not supportive of that particular amendment, even though I understand where it's coming from.